This is how I used Houdini and Blender to make this terrain in Unreal. It all starts in Blender, where I quickly sculpt a blocky for my terrain. I prefer to do this by hands rather than using noise maps because that way I can control where the mountains and valley are. In short, I have complete control over the composition of my scene. In Blender, I also create blocky shapes for large rocks because here too I want to have control over the shapes of the assets. Once I've got a few variations, I place them manually on my terrain. Not that this part of the workflow requires a bit of manual work on my part, but that's something I wanted to have to avoid having a completely procedural and computer-generated loop. But now we're getting down to business. This time we open Houdini and we start the real things. I import the blocky terrain and can now start refining it by adding noise and distortion. A little bump here and there to make the terrain a bit more uneven and some distort to create interesting shapes. The terrain is now ready to be eroded. Using Houdini's tools, I can simulate the erosion of the terrain undergone by thousands of years of rain and wind. It's always a thrill to watch the terrain transform in a matter of seconds. I can even include the rock blocky I've created in Blender in the simulation so that the terrain conforms to the rocks. Speaking of rocks, I can also use Houdini to refine and detail them, adding fracturing effects. The bonus of erosion simulation is that Houdini creates all these layers for me to use in my Unreal material. There's a debris layer, a sediment layer, a water layer, and so on. I can create those manually too, of course, like here, where I create a cliff layer, isolating only the steeper slopes of my terrain. And to detail, I can scatter assets using these same layers. Why not put grass on all flat surfaces, excluding areas where debris is concentrated during erosion, and in the debris zone, I can fill in some small rocks. When it's all done, I export it all into Unreal, starting with the terrain. Houdini is smart enough to import this as a landscape into Unreal with all layers already set up as required. I assign material that I create using texture retrieved from Quixel and that I've retouched, and voila, I already got a working landscape. All that's left is to import the assets. I start with the big rocks, which again use Quixel textures that are tiny. Then I import the detail assets, like the small rocks and the grass, and that's what I was able to create in just an hour. Note that Houdini is a smart boy, and he even configured all my props in the most optimal way. The rocks are converted into static meshes instances, and the grass is a 48-actor instance. And the best thing of all is the flexibility it gives me. If I decide afterwards that I'd like to have a big hill in the center of my map, I can always go back into Blender, modify my blocky, and go back into Houdini to have my terrain regenerated. In just a few clicks, I've modified my terrain. Imagine the time it would have taken me if I had to replace all the little rocks and bits of grass by hand. That would be too much. And that's it. I hope it was useful to you, and if you want to see more, go check SILKROAD project on YouTube, a game I'm working on as a solo dev. Thank you, bye.